My name is Chris, and I've been a park ranger in Rocky Mountain National Park for the past 10 years. I've always considered myself a rational and skeptical person, but something happened during one of my patrols that made me question everything I thought I knew about the world. It was a chilly night in late fall, and I was out on my usual patrol route. The stars were out, and the moon was bright, casting an eerie glow over the trees. I had been walking for about an hour when I heard a rustling in the bushes. At first, I thought it was just an animal, but as I got closer, I realized that it was something else entirely. A dark figure moved through the underbrush, always just out of sight. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes on me, watching my every move. I tried to call for backup on my radio, but it was dead. I was alone in the woods with only my flashlight to guide me. The figure continued to stalk me, always staying just out of reach. At first, I thought it might be a prank, or maybe a lost hiker. But as the minutes ticked by, I began to realize that there was something deeply wrong about the figure that was following me. It moved with a strange, almost inhuman grace, and it seemed to be drawing me deeper and deeper into the woods. As I walked, I began to feel a sense of dread wash over me. I knew that I was being hunted, and that whatever was following me was not human. I tried to stay calm and focused, but the fear was overwhelming. Suddenly, the figure appeared in front of me. It was a skinwalker, a creature from Native American folklore that can take the form of a human or an animal. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, and its mouth twisted into a sinister grin. For a moment, I froze. I had heard stories of skinwalkers before, but I had always dismissed them as superstition. Now, faced with this creature in the flesh, I didn't know what to do. The skinwalker began to circle me, its movements fluid and graceful. It seemed to be toying with me, savoring my fear. I knew that I needed to get away, but my legs felt like lead. Just as I thought I was done for, I heard a gunshot. The skinwalker howled in pain and disappeared into the night. I looked up to see a fellow ranger, Sarah, standing over me, her gun still smoking. We quickly made our way back to the ranger station, both of us shaken by what had just happened. I tried to rationalize what I had seen, but deep down, I knew that it was real. I had come face to face with a skinwalker, and it was something that I would never forget. Over the years, I've heard of other rangers encountering strange and unexplained phenomena in the park. Some have seen ghostly apparitions, while others have heard unexplained noises in the woods. But for me, the skinwalker will always be the most terrifying experience of my career. I still patrol the woods, but I do so with a newfound respect for the mysteries of the natural world. There are things out there that we can't explain, and it's important to approach them with caution and respect, because you never know what might be lurking in the darkness. As a park ranger, it's my job to protect visitors to the park and to maintain its natural beauty. But sometimes I can't help but feel like I'm a small, insignificant part of something much larger and more mysterious. There are secrets hidden in the woods of Rocky Mountain National Park, and I don't know if we'll ever fully understand them. But I'll continue to do my best to keep the park safe and to keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. Who knows what other mysteries the wilderness holds? Last month, I was on my usual patrol in Rocky Mountain National Park when I came across something strange. As I made my way through the woods, I noticed that several campsites along my route had been abandoned. At first, I thought that maybe the campers had simply left early, but as I examined the sites more closely, I realized that there was something deeply wrong about them. The tents were torn and shredded, as if they had been attacked by some sort of animal, and there were strange symbols etched into the trees nearby, symbols that I didn't recognize. As I continued on my patrol, I found more and more abandoned campsites, each one more eerie than the last. It was as if something had swept through the woods, leaving destruction in its wake. I radioed for backup, but no one else was available to join me, so I continued on alone, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. As the sun began to set, I came across a final campsite, one that was different from the others. The tent was still standing, but it was surrounded by a ring of fire, as if to ward off any intruders, and there was a figure standing at the edge of the clearing watching me. I approached cautiously, my hand on my gun. As I got closer, I realized that the figure was a woman, dressed in tattered clothes and covered in dirt and grime. She looked as if she had been living in the woods for months. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the symbols etched into the trees. "That's how you keep them away," she whispered. "The spirits. They come out at night. They're hungry." I didn't know what to make of her words, but I knew that I needed to get her out of there. I helped her pack up her tent, and we made our way back to the ranger station. As we walked, the woman began to tell me her story. She had been camping in the park with her husband, and they had stumbled upon something they shouldn't have. They had seen strange lights in the sky, and they had heard voices whispering in the darkness. One night her husband had gone missing. She had searched for him, but he was nowhere to be found. And then, the spirits had come for her. They had torn apart their campsite, and she had been forced to flee into the woods. I didn't know what to believe, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Whatever had happened to her, it had clearly left its mark. Over the next few days, I investigated the abandoned campsites, but I didn't find any solid evidence of what had caused the destruction. The symbols etched into the trees were unfamiliar to me, and no one else at the ranger station had ever seen anything like them. But the woman's story stayed with me, and as I patrolled the woods at night, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, like something was waiting for me in the darkness. One night I saw the lights that the woman had described. They were faint, flickering in the distance like distant stars. And then I heard the whispers, faint but unmistakable. I didn't stick around to investigate. I knew that whatever was out there was not something that I wanted to face alone. To this day, I still patrol the woods of Rocky Mountain National Park, but I do so with a newfound respect for the unknown. There are things out there that we can't explain, things that defy our understanding of the natural world, and sometimes the best thing to do is to leave them be. As I make my rounds, I keep an eye out for any signs of the spirits that the woman spoke of. I don't know if they're real or not, but I don't want to take any chances. The abandoned campsites still haunt me, though. I can't shake the feeling that something terrible happened there, something that we may never understand. And the symbols etched into the trees continue to baffle me. I've consulted with experts in Native American folklore, but no one has been able to identify them. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the woods, I feel like I'm being watched. I've heard strange noises, and I've seen shadows moving in the darkness. But I've never been able to catch a glimpse of the spirits themselves. I don't know what to make of the woman's story. Maybe she was delusional, or maybe she experienced something that truly defies explanation. But I know one thing for certain. I won't be camping in Rocky Mountain National Park anytime soon. I was a park ranger, having worked in Rocky Mountain National Park for over a decade. I loved the wilderness and the solitude of the park, and I took pride in protecting its beauty and wildlife. But all that changed one fateful night, when I encountered something I couldn't explain. It was a warm summer evening, and I was making my rounds through the park. As I drove my truck down a remote dirt road, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the truck, shining my flashlight into the darkness. At first I saw nothing but trees and shadows, but then I saw movement again. Something was darting between the trees, staying just out of sight. I called out, but there was no answer. I cautiously made my way into the woods, following the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs. That's when I saw them, shadowy figures moving through the trees. They were humanoid in shape, but indistinct and insubstantial. It was like they were made of smoke or fog, with no real substance to them. I couldn't make out any features, just their vague outlines. I was frozen in terror. I'd seen plenty of wildlife in the park, but nothing like this. The figures seemed to be aware of my presence, and they moved in my direction. I could feel a cold wind blowing from them, and I could smell the sickly sweet scent of decay. I turned and ran back to my truck, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drove away, I looked back and saw the figures following me, keeping pace with the truck. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but there was no denying it. Something was stalking me. Over the next few weeks, the shadowy figures continued to haunt me. They appeared at random times and places throughout the park, always staying just out of reach. I tried to ignore them, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me. One night as I was patrolling a remote campground, I saw the figures again. This time they were moving closer, their insubstantial forms taking on a more solid appearance. I could see that they were humanoid, but with twisted and distorted features that made my skin crawl. I tried to radio for help, but my radio was dead. My phone had no signal. I was alone, with no way to call for backup. The figures closed in around me, their cold breath on my neck. I could hear them whispering in some dark, incomprehensible language. I don't know how long I was trapped there, surrounded by those shadowy figures. It felt like hours, but it could have been minutes. All I know is that I was terrified, and that I thought I was going to die. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the figures vanished. The cold wind stopped blowing and the whispers faded away. I was left standing there, shaking and gasping for breath. I still don't know what those figures were, or why they targeted me. Maybe they were spirits, or some kind of dark energy that had been awakened by something in the park. All I know is that I'll never forget that night, and that I'm always on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. Rocky Mountain National Park is a beautiful and inspiring place, but it's also a place of mystery and danger. As a park ranger, I've seen my share of strange and unexplained things, but nothing has ever frightened me as much as those shadowy figures. After that night, I became obsessed with finding out what those shadowy figures were. I spent hours poring over books about local folklore, looking for any mention of creatures or spirits that matched their description. I even consulted with other rangers and experts in the field, but no one could give me a satisfactory answer. But as the months passed, I started to notice something strange happening in the park. Campers and hikers began reporting sightings of strange, shadowy figures moving through the woods. Some even claimed to have been chased by them, just like I had. I knew then that I wasn't alone in my experience, and that there was something truly sinister happening in the park. I contacted my superiors and pushed for an investigation, but they dismissed my claims as overactive imagination and stress-induced hallucinations. I knew they were wrong, and I continued to gather evidence and testimony from witnesses. I even started recording my own encounters with the shadowy figures, hoping to convince someone of their existence. Finally, after months of pushing and pleading, the park authorities relented and allowed for a paranormal investigation team to come in and explore the park. They used all kinds of equipment, from electromotive meters to infrared cameras, to try and capture evidence of the shadowy figures. What they found was shocking. They captured footage of shadowy figures moving through the woods just as I had seen. They recorded strange sounds and voices, whispers in some unknown language, and they found evidence of a long-forgotten Native American burial ground deep in the park, which some experts believe may be the source of the dark energy that had been awakened. The investigation team ultimately concluded that there was something paranormal happening in Rocky Mountain National Park. They couldn't give a definitive answer as to what the shadowy figures were, but they recommended that the park authorities take measures to protect visitors from potential harm. Since then, the park authorities have instituted new safety measures and precautions, including more ranger patrols, increased lighting, and warning signs. And while the shadowy figures still haunt my memories, I take comfort in knowing that we are doing everything we can to keep visitors safe from whatever lies in the darkness of Rocky Mountain National Park. I may never fully understand what happened to me that night, or what those shadowy figures truly were, but I know that I'm not alone in my experience, and that there are forces at work in the world that we may never fully understand,